We're back with you, and we are really excited to be joined by our colleague at Meadowlark Media, the Le Batard and Friends Network. It's David Samson, the host of Nothing Personal with David Samson. You may know him from The Marlins. You may know him from Survivor. You may know him from yelling at you on a podcast, but we're excited to have him here. Welcome, David.
So happy to be here. I can't believe that this is my first time with you guys, but I love your show and I love your producer.
I've been told you never forget your first time with Peter, so this is going to be special for you. And we too love our
also
producer.
it's always the first of many times. I'm
Yeah, exactly.
not a day tripper.
And we do share producers, the great Sarah McCrory, so she has helped make this long-awaited collaboration happen. So we're psyched to have you. Let's get into it. Look, the WNBA is having a moment right now. Okay, straight out of college basketball having a moment. So women's basketball, this is an inflection point. And so it's been an underdog for so long, but we just had record draft ratings on the heels of record Final Four ratings. So guys, let's get into how the WNBA can capitalize on this moment in time and increase its place in the sporting landscape and the almighty dollar, its financial heft.
Yeah, the financial part is really the most interesting thing that's not being discussed too much. And what is in common with everything you're saying is Caitlin Clark. And what the WNBA has to do is make this not a Caitlin Clark bump. It has to be a women's basketball bump. And to do that, you need to increase sponsorship revenue and gate revenue for non-Indiana Fever games. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch. The easy thing would be for Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, and for the league in general to just keep pumping out Clark content. It's low-hanging fruit. You get great numbers. Everything's positive about that. But at the end of the day, it's like a Fugazi because you cannot increase the valuation of every team. You can't get a better overall broadcast deal. You have to have another pillar. Like I talked about Nothing Personal, Magic and Bird. There's always got to be somebody else. Now, the argument I get is, hey, we already have it. We've got Angel Reese, and that's the reason. I'm sorry. It's been really Caitlin Clark centered, no matter what people are telling you. So their main job, number one, is to make sure that they can spread out this good cheer and turn it into good dollars.
And guys, tell me if you agree with this, but what's fantastic about this particular draft is I think the talent, and not just the talent, but the personalities and the diversity of on-court skills, they're all there to do that if they land on this moment correctly. You're right. It's not just Angel Reese, but the combination of Reese and Cardoso it's like that team is fascinating. That team has twin towers. I mean, Cameron Brink, a lot of these players are going to places that are kind of set up to build franchises around the new talent that's coming to the league in this moment. You think that's right? I don't think it's just Clark.
Well, and let's not forget too, there is massive existing talent already in the league.
Yeah.
It just the casuals who are going to follow Caitlin Clark into this league maybe haven't discovered that group of players yet. So the hope is that Caitlin Clark is the gateway drug to falling in love with a bunch of veterans, right, David?
That's fascinating because you have super teams ready to be discovered, right? The Aces, the Liberty. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a good point.
But David, you think like that and that's where I've seen a lot of the parallels.
Let's talk about the gateway drug because it's fascinating. The whole purpose of a gateway drug and why people are scared of it, it's not the initial drug that's the gateway drug. It's the stuff that comes after that really screws you up. And so if you put that into financial terms, if Caitlin Clark is the gateway drug, then what you need is something as strong as heroin to hook people. And you saw it work with F1 and Drive to Survive. You've seen it work on occasion, but we're living through a moment where it's not working, where Tiger Woods was the gateway drug and then the drug, and then Masters has a problem. The ratings are down. Interest is down. They're fighting in golf. So finding, will Angel Reese or Cardoso, will people be interested in that on its own? That's the question of the day.
I mean, I think you're going to have some pissed off veterans who are great players who are like, why, you've already seen it, right? Why are these newer
Mostly
players
from
getting
retired players?
No, but it leads to great tension. and drama and storylines, and I'm here for it. And here's where I've seen a lot of references that, as you alluded to, that the WNBA, again, short lifespan still, is roughly where the NBA was in the 70s or 80s, right? Or this may be its magic bird moment. Here are two advantages, first of all, that I think that puts the WNBA in some ways in better shape than they were then. One, the college game right now is geared toward the women. The men have annual free agency, as we've been discussing, and it's falling apart. The women have the bigger stars, and I'm not so sure that next year Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins won't have a Caitlin Clark-like impact again on the women's game. So
that's the statement. If
that
Caitlin
keeps
Clark
coming.
becomes an annual moment where there's next up, then this whole show changes, because that means the WNBA becomes the NBA. We've not seen that before. We haven't even had a Caitlin Clark. People can talk about all the talent that was in there, from Rebecca Lobo. Go back to college when Connecticut won every year. It was a blip. It didn't matter. And I don't mean to be so harsh about it, but it didn't. Now it really matters. And so if there's the next Caitlin Clark, game over.
The template is there. People were exposed to Paige Beckers deep in the tournament. People were exposed to Juju Watkins. Beckers will be there at least another year. Juju could be there, 2-3 more years. That's cool. The second thing is that the NBA didn't have in the 1980s, and is gambling and fantasy. Okay. It is a whole other level.
Actually, it was just illegal.
Well, it is a whole other level. By the way, what are people? What season of the year are people most lacking on things to bet on? It's the summer, unless you're like me and you're betting on no run, yes run, first inning, which is still the greatest bet in sports, by the way.
The worst.
But otherwise, this opens up a whole new window for people to bet. Again, potential exponential increase in popularity, right? If suddenly this is not just a hot property for people to follow, to go to games, to enjoy, but also to satisfy their gambling itch, right?
There's no question that gambling runs sports now, and we're part of DraftKings Network, and we understand the behemoth that we're dealing with, and that's what all sports want. We pretend to shy away from it, but no, we're embracing it as leagues. WNBA would love people to bet on them, just like baseball would love to have more gambling money inside it, the way the NFL does and the way the NBA does. But I still think you need characters first. I think people will do gambling and fantasy, but they like to have what I call anchor tenants. An anchor tenant is in the gambling world is, hey, I'm watching the game, I'm going to put action on it. That's the forward way. The backwards way is, I got nothing to do, I'm going to make a bet and then I'll watch it. What we're aiming for as leagues is people wanting to watch it and then bet on. We'll see what happens.
David, let me ask you about the financial side of this. I see a lot of people online saying, how can the players want more money, or here's why salaries are so low, because the leagues never turn to profit. Can you talk a little bit about whether and how much profits matter? I mean, there's a lot of companies that have never turned a profit or that have become great tech companies. Are you buying the WNBA as a growth stock where annual profits don't matter so much as getting the investment necessary to keep growing revenues, keep all those legs growing?
It's funny.
Do profits matter in this scenario?
Yeah. So when you're talking about a startup, you generally know that you've got a runway to profitability, and that runway can be anywhere from 6 months to 10 years. It depends on the company, and it depends on how well capitalized the company is and how easily you can control labor costs. The WNBA controls labor costs really well, as we're seeing with what Caitlin Clark's rookie deal is. They also have an opportunity to exploit broadcast revenue in a way they have not done before, having really come under the umbrella of the NBA up to this moment, and maybe even in the next deal, we'll wait to see. But what you really need to see out of the WNBA is standalone national deals. The national deals, sponsorship deals, broadcast deals. Then you marry that with the local gate revenue, people going to games, average ticket price. We know people are buying season tickets in Indiana. What's the price? Are they going to renew? If Caitlin Clark gets hurt, if the team is bad, what's the impact? Don't tell me about the Las Vegas Aces playing in T-Mobile Arena when the Indiana Fever come to town. Tell me about them moving to T-Mobile Arena permanently, where they have more capacity and where they're getting more revenue. That
So,
to
David,
me is the key.
So, David, before we wrap, let me ask you your best guess then. The players can reopen this CBA at the end of next season in 2025. They're going to want a bigger share of revenues. They're going to want more of an opportunity to get at shared revenues. Do you think that the league will get the kind of deals and sponsorship and the increase in revenues necessary for the players to get a bigger share of revenues and for that to even be possible?
That's the $64,000 question. Can they take advantage of the moment? Are they going to be able to monetize this Caitlin Clark phenomena? And the problem is, when your business is starting and you're taking advantage of the revenue growth, that's not the time to increase your labor cost. I feel as though there's one more CBA left to go before you'll see a huge increase in what the players get paid. I think the next CBA will be more about comfort, maybe more about charter planes, more about hotels, how they live. That's sort of incremental that you can give to labor, but a true financial change in how you calculate the revenue sharing and how you calculate the cap and what percentage the players get. I think we're a bit away from that, because the WNBA has to be smart and they have to find out for themselves whether this is a moment or whether this is a lifetime.
Are the players going to play ball on that though, or are we headed to? I mean,
what choice do they have?
Well,
they did last
a
time.
labor impasse.
They did last time because they wanted this to be about equity, meaning an equity stake, not perfect equality in salaries. And I think there is the potential for a win-win. I hate ending anything on a on a note of it's important to control labor costs, but
listen, I'm sorry to say that, but you're asking about what's in the life of the company. The WNBA as a league is at a very important moment. And I was just trying to point out to your listeners that when you're in a moment from a management standpoint, you have to increase your revenue without a concomitant huge increase in your expenses. And I think that's what the WNBA is going to be looking out for.
It's fascinating because it's a win-win so far, and it's a potential win-win into the future. It's going to take a lot of management.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering. Do you think there is enough alignment from the players and for management to sort of do this hand in hand, or is that just too utopian an idea? And are we headed for strife quickly?
It's a good sign if there's strife. That means the league's doing well. I like that. I don't shy away from labor strife. I don't think you should. No one locks out or strikes a company that's failing and not going anywhere, where there's no passion for it. People lock out and strike when there's more to fight over. And that would be a good sign for the WNBA, not a bad sign.
Well, look, no one knows strife like I do, working with Peter every week. So I'm glad you experienced that with us. I feel bonded to you now. And
thank you.
We will have to have you back sooner rather than later. There's a lot going on in the world that you touch on, whether it's relocation of franchises or you mentioned baseball and its finances. So let's do this again soon. Survivor. I will talk for days. So let's do this again soon. In the meantime, Jordan, that's Peter, and we'll be back with you guys next week.